Welcome back, everyone, to R2Kast number 97. It is a different background. I believe the last time we were in this background was with Mandy and Brian speaking about the Riverside Bog Cranberry Farm in Canada, which I think was 30 episodes ago. I think it was 67. I'm at my mum and dad's. I'm currently lambing. I know you all say that I never work on a farm, and you're basically correct, but there is like 8 days a year I do, so I'm going to pretend that I'm actually a farmer. I did actually turn up a minute or two late because I was lambing twin and a triplet, so I am a real person in the farming world. Today we're on episode number 97, as mentioned. That means 3 away from the big 100. Quite exciting to think we've sort of almost made that. There was 26 episodes of people in farming posts before the R2Kast began, where I sort of wrote little stories about them, but I don't know how to write, I don't know how to do all that stuff. It was pretty boring. I never shut up, so I thought the podcast was the correct thing to go into. I have, over the last few episodes, started saying a few hints as to what it might be for episode 100. All I'm going to say is they have been on the R2Kast before. I've said that already before, but I can't think of any sort of cool way to try and give you some more tips for who might be coming on for episode 100. Last week we had Rhys Jones, number 96, talking about cattle strength. Rhys from Wales was getting into professional rugby, and he was semi-pro for some time, but saw a career in sort of personal training and that, and started a gym up in his farm. Really cool story. Spoke a lot about Down syndrome awareness as well. His son was born with Down syndrome. Spoke about a really traumatic story in the hospital. It was really quite deep and really quite sort of moving. So a really good episode to listen to there. Next week, it's sort of dependent on some more people, but hopefully we should be speaking to NFU Scotland, speaking about what's going on there. R2Kast number 15, we spoke to Christine Cuthbertson, who was a regional manager at NFUS, now moved on to Monitor Farms. We got a wee chat about NFU then. Martin Kennedy, who's the president, I think was number 17. So we've sort of seen what's going on there, but it was quite good to get 4 or 5 folk coming on from a group podcast perspective and see what's happening. And I think that has got to be one of the longest intros I've ever done, trying to pretend that I actually live and work on a farm sometimes. But today's quite an interesting episode. You're going to take the piss at me. I always say it's an interesting episode. It would be pretty weird if I tried to do an episode with someone I didn't think was interesting. But I say interesting because I've been following this person for some time, and I didn't actually realise quite how long until I mentioned, but we'll explain that in a minute. Today we've got Karen Moynihan, who you probably know from TikTok, maybe Instagram, maybe even YouTube as well. But Karen, do you want to say hello?
Hi guys, how are you?
Just before we get started with another episode of the R2Kast, I would like to thank our primary sponsors, A-Plan Rural. A-Plan Rural are heavily involved on the social media scene in the ag space with 120,000 followers on Instagram. They use this following to host social media takeovers with farmers throughout the country to showcase their stories. They also post to their rural community blog with further stories about these people in the industry. On top of this, they like to support initiatives that are championing the British agricultural industry, such as myself. So thank you to A-Plan Rural for that.
Yeah, looking forward to it, and thanks for coming on, Karen. Appreciate the time. I said I'd followed for a while. Was TikTok where you started, Karen? Was that where it began?
Oh yeah, TikTok is where it began. I can't even remember when now. Did you check the date on that?
No, I didn't actually. I should have. I don't know if it was. Have I still got it up? Oh, I have. Your first post was on the. Oh, it's written all backwards. Wait a minute. 27th of November, 2020.
Jeez, yeah. That sounds about. I think I was a year before that. Yeah, and then
Okay. And you already started posting every day. That was three days in a row. But I'd said to Karen off camera that I was like, I remember the first video was it a Charlie Heifer? Is it a Charlie? I genuinely can't remember.
It was a Charlie, Heifer. Yeah.
And she was on a pen and she was sort of getting under the bottom of the gate and into the silage. And I just remember watching it, having a watch that was fine. Go through from TikTok as you do, and you never look at it again. And then started popping up some stories about a famous 135 moving some bales, which we'll get into. But I realised how much of a super fan I must be because it was the second ever post on TikTok, and it was a day into Karen's TikTok life. So I'm obviously somewhat of a stalker, but we will get into all that stuff later on. Karen, you're from a farm. Could you tell us about the farm, first off?
Yeah, so it is a small suckler farm in the southwest of Ireland, County Kerry. So it was my grandfather's. So he bought it in early 60s, I think. He came over from the UK. He had moved to London. He was a labourer over there for years, and himself and my grandmother and my dad and his brother moved over and bought the farm and started as dairy. My dad often tells me the story about him just being able to milk cows like no other man out there. But yeah, that's how they started it. Then they moved to sucklers, I think, in the 80s. And we've been suckler farming ever since. So my dad took it in 2012. He took over from my granddad. But my granddad was still involved, I'd say, into his 90s. He was still involved. Wow. And then, he was some man. He lasted till he was almost 102. So... Right. He passed away a couple of years ago, but yeah, he did well. He was still walking up the fields at 100. So
some of these old folks are made of different things. Some of these old folks, I mean, I get tired walking up some of the hills, I'm 26.
Yeah. Well, I do the same hills every day and I'm still not fit. I can't get used to them. I don't know what it is. But and then I suppose my dad had his accident then in when was it? Was it 2015? 2014 maybe? So not long after he took over, I suppose. And then I started helping out in about 2019, I think it was. Okay.
And not a thing you have to answer at all, but was the accident a farm-based accident, or was it?
Oh, no, it wasn't. So He was part-time farming and he was a carpenter as well, and he was working on an old house and he was in the attic space and the joists just gave way. So it wasn't even a massive fall, it was just ceiling height, but it was just the way he fell, and so he broke his spinal cord or severed his spinal cord. So that's him in a wheelchair for life, unfortunately, So that was a big shock and a big adjustment,
Yeah, absolutely. Especially when he's sort of just taken over, not maybe sole, like you said, like grandfather was still there, but sort of the main reins. That's tough. And even forgetting about the business, that's a horrible thing to happen for the family. When you mentioned your grandfather moved from London, were they English or were they Irish? They went out before?
They are Irish and they moved over and came back. Yeah.
Just wasn't for them.
So I don't do you know what? I actually don't know, but I'd say the plan was never really to stay there long term anyway, They were both from the country. They were both from very close to where the farm is now. So I assume it was probably always my granddad's, plan to get back here. I can't see them being suited to the city life somehow.
Well, I mean, there's no way of me saying this without sounding rude in some way, but there's just something about, and I'll include myself in this, just people that are from farms and from the countryside, they go to London and they're like, oh, this is fun. And then 2 days later, they're like, but I don't have a shed outside. I don't have, oh, you're so used to this. I mean, I've got a flat in a very small town. And I'm from Arran, like the island, and on this farm. And sometimes I'm just like, I've bought, I don't know, like even just washer liquid for the car, and I've filled the car and that's fine. I'm like, oh, where am I going to put this? I've got to set it in the flat. I don't want to put it in the car. Like, it's such you're so used to space. And I guess to go away from that, it can be quite weird. Is the area you're in, Karen, is it mainly dairy or is it mainly beef or is it a split?
I suppose it's a split, in fairness. Like immediately around me, it is definitely a split, although the farms now on both sides of me are rented out by dairy lads, which I assume is very common, around the
Yeah.
place these days. But then, yeah, we do have a few beef lads, and another neighbour, he finishes cattle and things. So there is a bit of a mix. I don't think there's many sucklers near us here anyway.
Right.
So yeah, we're the only ones who love that level of hardship, I suppose.
Yeah, so it's mainly dairying or finishing systems. You're sort of the outcast in that sense. Yeah. Are you any specific breed that you're pushing, or is it just sort of a mix?
We like the Simmentals, so they'd be the main ones. So we're trying to get all our cows to be Simmentals. So we have a Shirley now at the moment, but yeah, she's doing well. She had a calf there now as well last week. It's another good calf, but she has a bit of Simmental in her anyway. But yeah, we're looking for some good replacements now this year. So we have hopefully four Simmentals coming. So one was already a bull. So we'll see if we get a heifer or two, but yeah, Simmental is the one. And then we generally cross them with the Shirley. That's
right, okay.
The cross that we do. We have a couple of limousines in there, but mainly because the bull is easy calving, and those two cows, they were heifers. They had C-sections, both of them. We never had a C-section on the farm before, and we had two. Right. Pretty much the first year I was farming, I almost lost my life. So yeah, they've gotten the easy calver since, just to be on the safe side. So hopefully they'll be replaced now by the strong Simmental heifers we've coming through.
Yeah, no, good stuff. And are you reading all the way through to finishing, or are you selling store? What's the market?
We sell at store, yeah. So we've 3 going now this week. They're just about the 2-year mark.
Right.
So for us to finish, when we're so small scale, like we've 20 at the moment, that's with 2 new calves. We don't have any silos or anything, it's literally 50 kg or 25 kg bags we're buying the ration in, so you're paying top money for it, you're not going to make the money back, so we get them to a point and then off to the marsh they go.
And is that the plan? Moving into sort of the Simmental is the intention. Is beef suckling the plan full term? Is there any look at bringing anything else on? No, you're happy where you are.
No.
Yeah.
No, happy where we are. You get tempted by the contract rearing there of the heifers. I've seen a lot of that recently, and I'm like, that seems all right. But look, you'd have to go full time at that anyway, and. There's something about the sucklers, you have them as a calf, then you have them as a cow, calving themselves. There's something about that I like, so I can't see it changing anytime soon, but it's always going to remain small here, I would say. So
there's a story to it, isn't there? There's like there's a calendar just out on the other side of that wall there of me 3 years ago holding a black lamb with a saltire, like a Scottish flag on its face. And, seeing that lamb 2 years on, seeing that lamb, unfortunately, it was a dead lamb there this year, but twinning on another one, and seeing her go out as that sort of adopted mother and stuff, it's got that story, them, and when it's beef cattle, sheep, you don't know them all, the sort of fun looking ones and the exciting ones and the ones that make the random noise, but the cattle, and there's the connection there, and it makes it, I don't know if natural's the word, but there's a word there, isn't there? Like, I don't know, special probably is what jumps out. So I get what you see in that. I do. Do you get involved in showing or anything like that?
No, to be honest, generally they're too wild. There's no way although the 2 calves I have so far this year, I've never seen anything like them. They are the quietest pets. They're like dairy calves. I don't know how they turned out so quiet, because their mothers are not in any way quiet. But there's more time in that and things, and just with the full-time job as well, it'd be too much really to take on, I'd say,
So what Karen, away from the farm? You're not full time on the farm. What's your life away from the farm?
So my full-time job, the one that pays the bills, is area manager with ALDI. So yeah, that's the full-time job. That's a 5-day-a-week job, and then I work the farm around that.
Yeah, fit it in where you can.
Yeah. Like, in fairness now, the winter was long. It felt long because the cattle were in really early last year. They were in the end of October, which is the earliest they've been in around here in years and years. But so that felt long. But already now with the longer evenings, it's grand, it's manageable. And the day job is flexible too, it's on a Monday to Friday. So if I need to take a day off for a vet call or anything, or silage or whatever it might be, I can do it, which makes things a lot easier. But you can get a lot done in the evenings when it's bright, and the 2 days off.
Yeah, well, that's it. And I have become so accustomed to that 2 days off. It's actually tragic at this point. Like, I mean, I've come back here and I'll do like 7 days in a row and I'm knackered. I'm useless these days. So yeah, I hold my hands up. I've became soft, it must be said. Did you go to uni for that job, or before that job, I guess?
So I went to Cork, so that's about an hour and a half away from here. So I moved up when I was 18, lived the life for 3 years for my undergrad. So I did geography and sociology for that. I'd say I did about 7 hours a week. It was great. And then I did a master's then in planning and sustainable development, and I did work experience for like 3 weeks and absolutely hated it. So I said, no, not for me. So I actually got my visa for Canada and I was set. I was ready to go off to Canada, and ALDI came up and I said, oh, sure, I'll apply for it. And the interview just happened to be before I was planning to go, and I went for it and I got it. And I said, you know what, I'd rather be at home. I'm a bit of a home bird anyway. I would have been very close to my grandparents, and didn't really see myself living abroad. So yeah, I stayed in Cork then for, I don't know, another 6 or 7 years after that before moving back home to Kerry.
So was the original plan to live in Canada? It wasn't just for a trip?
No, live. I was going to go for 2 years. Planning was big in Canada at that time. Yeah. I was thinking of going to Alberta to just work in planning over there, just because I thought it would be different to the planning in Ireland. Now, I don't know, would it have been, but I'm perfectly happy with my choice anyway. I am, in fairness. So no, it all worked out for me now, in fairness, it did. So then, I started with ALDI as an assistant manager, and then I took a store for a couple of years, and then they promoted me to area manager, which is what got me back to Kerry, because I was in stores in Cork and Limerick, and then I became an area manager of a few stores in Kerry. So it was perfect, It meant I got to come back home, I built my house, and I was able to start helping out on the farm. So
an area manager, what's involved there? Are you in charge of a lot of different branches? Or you in charge? How does that work?
Yeah, so I'm in charge of a few different stores in Kerry. Well, one's in Cork. Well, 2 will be in Cork. I'm taking another one. But yeah, so I basically just, it's more I'm a support for, well, they might tell you something different, but I'm a support for the stores, if they need anything, I kind of help them out, and just a bit of auditing and things like that as well. So I just kind of float between each of the stores from day to day, looking busy.
A major job though. That sounds pretty intense. Is that stressful? Do you find it stressful?
It can be at times, but look, I'm there, I'm with them. It'll be 10 years next year now that I'm with them, so it gets easier, the longer you do it. So there are stressful days, absolutely. I mean, one thing for me, I always say, is the farm saved me during COVID. Because I don't know if you remember at the very start with all the panic buying and couldn't get stock in, couldn't sell it to the customers quick enough. That was really stressful. There was like obviously at the start of COVID, we didn't know how serious it was. We had staff dropping like flies then because they were close contacts of people and whatnot. So that was extremely stressful. So if I didn't have the farm, I probably would have gone mad then, because, you know, it's just a way of, you know, you pike a bit of silage there in the evening and all your worries go away.
It was such a surreal time. Like, I mean, I remember going out, sorry to mention the competition, but going out to Tesco to pick up some stuff. Like, I don't remember being like, oh my God, I need this. I just remember I was going to do a shop, like a normal day. And the thing that I always remember was there was no detergent. I'm like, what? Who's like, I need stuff, let's get detergent. Why is that the thing you're buying? Like, where's this panic came from? Also, if you've been at Aldi for 10 years, I have heavily underaged you. I thought you were like, I thought we were like the same age. I thought it was like sort of mid-20s. I was obviously wrong. Yeah, so been Aldi 10 years. Is that a type of company? I've always sort of been interested by these sort of companies because they're so fast growing in general. Like, is that a type of company that you would look to, and it might not be something you're interested in, but have the opportunity to really sort of shoot up the ranks should you want to? Or are you really happy where you are? Because you're already at a high position.
Yeah, so I suppose if you asked me that probably 3 or 4 years ago, I would have said, yeah, I want to go all the way. But I don't know, I think, you know, you probably get to a certain age in life, and look, I have the house here in Kerry. Any of the top positions are probably 3.5 hours from my door. You know, I'm not leaving this house, you know, so it would mean commuting, you know, 2 or 3 days a week, which adds to your day. And then I have the farm as well, and there's no way I'd give up the farm now either for it. You know? But I mean, you can do it if you want to do it. I just think I'm at a point now, look, they've promoted me twice already. That's enough for me, you know. I'm okay where I am for now. Anyway, you'd never say never, but right now I'm happy out. You know, it's a decent living. You know, it really is. Especially in Kerry, there aren't the jobs paying what Aldi pay around here. You know, so yeah, I'm lucky.
I can imagine that. Yeah. I was going to say, I had a question about Aldi. No, I didn't have a question about Aldi. So, obviously, tragic accidents happened with your dad. Is it just you running the farm?
Yeah, so I get help, obviously. My husband will help out if we're moving cattle or if I'm throwing the fertiliser bags in, if there's a lot of them or whatever. But other than that, I do the farming, which people cannot get their heads around. They just cannot get their heads around that we don't farm together. But it's just like if it was a man and his wife wasn't from a farming background, you know, it's just the exact same. So
it's important. You can't live in each other's pockets 24/7. It doesn't work.
Yeah, exactly. No, one person, it's enough, you know, me on my own, it's fine, you know. There's weeks there now where you'd be flat out, but I'm happy out doing it. Really.
That's the point, actually. I don't know if we asked. I have just smacked my shoulder that I dislocated last week, and that really hurt. That was really sore. How many cattle is it?
So through the winter we had 18 cattle.
Yeah.
So 7 cows, then we had the couple of stores, and then the weanlings from the cows. So like really the land could probably take a few more, but the shed can't take any more. So you're limited, you know. You're limited. I'd say this winter we might go in with 20, I'd say, for the winter, which we'd be maxed out at that then. You know, that's all we can take.
Well, that's it. You're saying, like, you know, the land might hold more, but if you hold more over the summer, you're going to have to lose something in the winter time. So it's just about hassle.
Yeah. And we can't really keep more cows. Well, we could keep more cows, but that would mean a lot more work for me. Whereas if we keep the cows, the weanlings and the stores, it just means the work is manageable. You know, there's just not, you know, I'm not calving for a month straight or 2 months straight, you know, it makes it easier.
Are we seeing Moynihan beef in Aldi?
I'm sure some of it has gotten there. I'm sure it has.
I haven't managed to get a brand name in there though.
No, I wish. I need to talk to someone higher up.
Yeah, that would be quite something if you could manage that. You might as well use your position, eh?
Yeah.
So the reason I originally got in touch, Karen, the reason I came across you obviously was the social media side. We mentioned that it started around that November time. I mean, with this podcast, it's food and farming, but I have an extremely deep interest in social media. I'm looking at a PhD in social media with its sort of impact on farming, maybe even in the throes at the minute of a Nuffield scholarship. I don't even know if I'm supposed to say that, but writing an application for that. Like, I really love the social media side. And I've had so many folk in this sort of ag social media scene, which I think is such a fun place. There's so many of us, we have a great time. And so many people started in 2020. Just about everyone.
Yeah.
I'm bored, sat at home on the farm. That's what it is. Let's put some videos out there. Was that why you started? Obviously, it wasn't just straight into lockdown. It was a few months later. But what made you put that first video up?
I would just like to quickly interrupt the show for a minute to give you some extra information on our primary sponsors, A-Plan Rural. A-Plan offer bespoke cover for farms and estates the UK over, and will give you tailored insurance for anything on the farm, from your old workhorse tractor that's been around 20 years or a fancy new and exciting diversification.
I honestly have no idea. I remember, so at the time I was living at home, and so were my two younger sisters while I was building this place, and I went up and I showed them my video that I was so proud of, like literally just a pan shot of the cattle in the shed to Fleetwood Mac and like some love hearts or something. And I was so pleased with it. And they were like, Karen, that's so sad. Like, why did you put that video? I was like, no, guys, like there's a lot of farmers on TikTok. And they were like, no, there isn't, because obviously they're not into farming at all. So they had never come across Farm Talk before. And I was like, no, really, guys, there is. And I got like 50 likes on it or something. And I was like, see, guys, people like the farming. But I have no idea why I did it, because I'm not into social media, or I'm not into social media. I wasn't at all into social media before that. You know, I wouldn't have really posted on Facebook, or when I had like my other Instagram account, my private account, I'd post maybe one photo a year, you know, so I was never into social media. So yeah, again, my sisters think it's mad what I've done. But I have no idea why I did it. I couldn't even tell you. I'd say I had only downloaded TikTok maybe a week before I started posting. And yeah, sure, I just said I'd throw up a few, see how it goes.
Did you like TikTok, like using it yourself? Were you one of the people that downloaded it and was like forever just watching, or not really?
Oh no, like it has consumed my life. I'm better now. I don't spend as much time now, but I mean at the start there, yeah, hours go by and you don't know what you're doing.
It's hellish. You know, wake up in the morning, you're like, oh, you know, sit and watch it for 10 minutes, and suddenly it's 12 o'clock. Like, where did that go?
Yeah. Dangerous.
I mean, I don't know if you watch football, but there was who was it? Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain. I think he's engaged to one of the guys in Little Mix from memory. I think I'm not good in this. Anyway, they did this dance where you sort of like, am I right? Yeah, I've got this. Yeah, perfect. They did this dance up the stairs, and I can't remember the tune. And I then went onto the sound, and I'm not joking when I say like 4 hours watching the same exact dance, the same exact tune. Like, my girlfriend at the time hated it because I would find a song and then just be like, this spooky, scary skeletons, Halloween. Like, I mean, I would put myself to sleep with it. It was hours, spooky, scary skeletons and shivers down your... I remember the dance, like, you know, it's what an overly addicting app it is. But you obviously, you said like you didn't post all that much on Facebook, and then you posted your first TikTok. I only know this. I'm not like a geek that follows you here. Like, to this point, I'm not like a stalker, but we checked at the start of the episode. I'm just holding my hands up for that one. You posted 3 in 3 days, so you obviously had the bug a wee bit. You'd enjoyed making that first video, and then it's sort of grown from there. What is it? If you get 60,000 followers on TikTok, is that right, or is that Instagram? I don't know.
I don't think it's that much. It's 50 something anyway.
Yeah,
I don't.
yeah.
55 maybe.
Obviously didn't expect that when you kicked off. Was there something that sort of, I always get really interested by this stuff. Was there something that sort of blew up? Like, was there like one video that just went huge, or what happened?
Yeah, there was. Well, I had a few that did decent. I used to like doing the ones like comparing myself to like the big tractors or whatever, or the contractors. You know, they used to do quite well, but I did one. God, I can't remember what the song was now, but it was a trend at the time. And I did it of me and my dad on the farm. And geez, that got a massive reaction, like strangers telling me they were crying and everything, you know. So that got me a lot of followers at the time. And then it kind of petered off again, and every now and then, you know, you just kind of get peaks and troughs with TikTok. I think, you know, it's just whatever it is with the algorithm.
It's such a weird place, TikTok. Such a weird old place. I love it, but it's so weird.
Yeah, it is. It is.
You did start uploading to YouTube as well. Do you post there often?
I try to do one a week. I usually do one a week. I've done maybe 2 a week the odd time, but there's a lot more work in YouTube than there is in TikTok. You know, obviously, because they're longer videos and there's more editing and timing with the music and all that. So I do about one a week, I would say, but then I'm not posting to TikTok as much anymore, you know. But I was putting off doing YouTube for a long time, you know. I talked to a few lads there on Instagram. They're like, will you just start doing YouTube? You're wasting your time, you know. And it's like, I can't. Nobody's going to want to watch what I'm talking about because they don't have a clue what I'm doing. And they're like, no, just do it. Just do YouTube. And then I was off in January. I just said I'd take a week after Christmas. It was busy. So I said I'd take a week. And I said, you know what, if I don't do it now, I'll never do it. So I just did my first one, and it got nothing for the first few days, you know, just a few likes, whatever, a few views. And then all of a sudden it just shot up. And so I was like, oh, maybe people are interested in a small little suckler farm on the southwest of Ireland. So yeah, I just kept doing it, and that grew a lot quicker than I thought it would. But, you know, it's probably a nicer place, YouTube, to post. I would say, you know, it's a more mature demographic, and people aren't quite as mean, let's say, as they are on TikTok.
Well, this was actually one thing I was going to ask about, because you quite often get folks saying, like, when you're one of my favorite things about your account is watching you work out ways to shift bales. It's so entertaining. I absolutely love it. And you just are never beaten. I'm looking at this and I'm like, she's got no chance. There is no chance in hell that's happening. And like you were talking about TikTok being a bit of a mean place, there's so many guys, and they're always like 35, 40, and they're mansplaining the fact that this is never going to work. The best way to do this is this, and you just tear them apart every time. And I think it's so entertaining. Absolutely loved it. Or what I should say. So tell us about the 135. Why are you so persistent with it? I know the reason, and it's but tell us.
Look, there's a few reasons. Like, to be honest, the one main reason is it's what I have. It's all I have, you know. Exactly. And I've never driven any other tractor than the 135. That's the only thing I know. So that's one. Well, that's the main reason, really. You know, like, maybe now if I sat into a nice new tractor, I'd be like, oh, what have I been doing? You know, but that's not going to happen because I'm not willing to spend the money on a tractor, you know, with the prices they are these days. But it does the job perfectly. Like, the first year now when I was farming, I didn't record any of them, but I can imagine the comments I was getting, because I didn't have the weight frame, first of all, for a long time. But also there was no gravel in there, so it was honestly a quagmire. Like, it was ridiculous. I would nearly be crying out of anger and frustration trying to dig the bales out of there, because I'd sink into the muck, the tires would be spinning, I'd be up on two wheels, then I'd get it to a certain point, but I would be dragging the bale. I wouldn't be lifting it, I would be dragging it out. And then there was just this slight little lip at the edge, and the bale, I could not lift the bale high enough to just get it over an inch, and it would catch on it every time, and I'd have to keep going forward and back and forward and back. I mean, a bale would take half an hour to put in. It was always like Rob would say, "Oh, are you putting in a bale this evening?" I'd be like, "Yeah." Like, "Oh, it should be a while." So, and he still kind of has it in his head now that me putting in a bale is going to take half an hour, whereas it takes 5 minutes now, because it was such an ordeal. So back then I really, really would have liked a bigger tractor. But since we got the gravel in, and since I got the weight frame put on the front, I mean, I don't really need another tractor for what I'm doing, because I do the bales, I clean out the pens, I use the transport box for that. I top the fields with my topper that I got last year, which is the biggest investment ever in machinery. I have my muck spreader now that I use, and I have the fertilizer spreader. And that's all I do anyway. I wouldn't be doing my own slurry or silage or anything. It wouldn't pay me to buy that equipment. So it's nice to have big shiny things, but the 135, it's never it did lead me down once, actually, I must say. It did. I blew, what did I blow? The radiator when I first used the topper. And I thought that was it, but it got a new radiator and nothing since. It starts on every cold morning, everything. So there's no reason to go with anything else.
My fix was not broken. I just get this image in my head. Was it Rob? You said your husband was called. Yeah. You're like, "Oh, I'm just gonna go put a bale out," and he's like, "Right, grand, I'll go down the shop, so I'll get the dinner on. I've got enough time for everything here anyway."
Literally, yeah. Oh God, so bad. Those were dark times. Yeah.
Oh, that's funny. I like that. That's good. No, it's very entertaining. I really do enjoy the TikToks. I don't know about you, but the way I use TikTok is I'm like maybe scroll. I'm not a scroller these days on social media. In fairness, I've kind of went away from that. But when I do, I'll sort of just go through and then I'll find one thing and I'll watch absolutely everything there. So that's certainly how I use it, or a sound or whatever. And as I say, I must have seen that first or second video of yours and never really thought anything of it. And then it was another one of you shifting a bale. And I seem to remember there was a rope involved. I seem to remember there was a rope to try and get it off the top. That's right, yeah. And that was when I sort of looked through every single one. And probably there's like a year's worth of your videos that I've liked. just looking through them all. Well, you're very welcome. You're welcome. I am the reason you've succeeded. No, not at all. But no, yeah, it's always great to meet the folk that you've been following for a while. It's quite good fun. I don't know, I always sort of get de-staged where I've sort of covered what I'm aware of. Is there anything about Karen Moynihan that we've missed? Is there anything that...
I think so. That is it,
I think so.
I think people know a lot about me now at this stage, between the TikTok, the Instagram, and the YouTube. I kind of put it all out there. There's no point. With me, what I want to do with social media is just show all aspects of it. There's nothing worse than you're watching something and you know that probably took 5 or 6 attempts to get it right or whatever, whereas I like to just show it. Look, I don't have a clue what I'm doing. I get my dad to tell me pretty much everything I'm doing the first few times at least, and then I'll definitely make a mess of it the first time, and then I might learn from that the second time, and I'll probably get it right the third time, but for me it is, it's just about, being as real as possible about it, I suppose, because I think there is so much pressure on people in farming anyway. You know, look, it's one thing for me, I have a full-time job to protect me, you know, that is my income. The farm isn't the income for me. But, you know, I just like to show people that it's okay that you don't have the big shiny machinery, or you don't get it right every time, or, you know, you just learn as you go, you know.
I think I like that, because there's a bit of a stigma, the word, I don't know. There's this sort of like idea that we all need to know everything in this industry. You know, you're coming into it and why don't you know this or that and whatever. And you're saying like, you don't know it, but once you're told once or twice, you do. In what other world is that not normality? Like, it absolutely should be.
But you know, I think probably social media feeds into that as well, because maybe some people, and you know, they're probably not aware of how they're coming across, but they can be very, you know, cutting and things in their responses to people, which isn't helpful either.
No.
And I get an awful lot of advice, especially on YouTube, which is great, you know, because it does help me learn. But people need to realize it's how you phrase things sometimes, and especially when in a comment and you've no context of, you know, you don't know this person, so you don't know their personality or anything. So I think social media can sometimes put pressure on people, you know, to be, you know, this ideal farmer or whatever it might be, which, look, it's not reality, it's not real life, you know.
I think folk relate to the people that aren't perfect, they're real. I mean, like yourself, like Cammy Wilson's one that jumps out to mind. He's very real with things. Ollie blogs, Charlotte Ashley, folk, you know, folk that are just jump to mind. Certainly, maybe TikTok's a bit different, but certainly YouTube, because it's long form content. It's not just a little snippet, like that's different. But when you're showing sort of a long, it's crazy that YouTube now is long form, isn't it? We're so like conditioned to watch 8 seconds and be bored.
But you know, I will say, since I started doing YouTube and watching more YouTube, my concentration has improved so much, because from TikTok, you just don't want. I was at a point on TikTok where if a video was more than 20 seconds long, I was like, no, too long. You know, I just couldn't possibly give it my time, you know, which is ridiculous, you know, but
No, it is, and I'm probably conscious of it. I mean, like, I don't really watch even YouTube anymore. You know, I don't really watch anything, and I include TikTok in that, in fairness. Sort of went downhill a lot. I think I got to a stage, you know, I've sort of now, quote unquote, got an online business to a point. So you're doing a lot of phone stuff and you're doing a lot of all that, and you're like, and I love doing all that. But the second you're done, you're like, oh man, the last thing I want to do is go down that rabbit hole again and just watch it. I had a screen time last week of 14 hours. I was like, oh my God, this is hellish. That's so bad. Yes. So no, there is some issues there, but it's very addicting. But no, here, Karen, it's been an absolute pleasure. There's 2 questions I ask everyone at the end of every podcast. I don't know if you've listened to any, but there is 2 questions. And they are: 1, where do you see yourself in 5 years? And 2, if you had any tips for folk getting into farming, what would they be?
Where do I see myself in 5 years? Probably in a very similar situation, I would say, because I'm happy with where it is at the moment. And I know loads of people are like, well, I'd like to have this and that. But to be honest, you know, I'm only at it 3 years or so. I haven't done too bad. Maybe, you know, a couple more good Simmental cows, but that's about it. You know, like we're constantly making improvements to the farm, so I've no doubt that there will be, you know, a few extra little bits and pieces improved around the place, but nothing majorly changed from where I am. And then people getting into farming, I would say stay away from the sucklers because they make no money. No, I wouldn't. I always say that, I think you said it earlier as well, it's natural. I always find suckler farming has to be the most natural type of farming there is, to a certain extent. Now, I don't run a bull with the cows, so if I really wanted to be very natural, I would do that. But we do the AI here, but you know, there is something nice to have that natural feel, you know, leaving the calf on the cow, you know, until it's of age to be weaned and all that. So no, I wouldn't say stay away from sucklers, but if you want to make money, stay away from sucklers. But I would say, especially for the women, don't be put off. You know, there's more and more women getting into it, you know, and look, I do it the hard way, but there's a lot of easier ways to do it. And, you know, you don't just need to be a big, strong man to do farming anymore. That isn't farming, you know. There's a lot more to farming than just being big and strong, you know. And I think women definitely have a massive role to play and shouldn't be put in a box either. You know, I often think sometimes women are seen as, oh, you know, helping on the farm, or they're great for looking after the lambs or the calves or whatever. You know, there's so much more that we can do, you know, and, you know, don't feel like you have to be put into that box if you do get into farming. You know, you can do anything a man can do.
I couldn't agree with that more. And there's one thing I normally say to people when we're talking about this, you know, I don't know if you know or not, Karen, but I'm a lecturer in agriculture. And, you know, females, I don't know if I've got the exact percentage, I don't, but females coming through it's just as much as males. You know, 1 year you get more than one, whatever. Mm-hmm. And the thing I always say, there's always a bit of a battle with some of the youngsters, you know, the boys saying, oh, I'm stronger and all that sort of stuff. That's fine, it's a bit of crack. But the thing I would say is I probably come under that monicum of whatever, of the strong guy or whatever. But there's very rare occasions that you require that. You know, like it's not something that you need to use all the time. So yeah, this idea that, oh, you need to do whatever it is a load of nonsense. And I think what you're talking about, like that, what's the word? That narrative is changing, and it's so clear and good to see, like, folk like yourself sort of putting that true story out there. Folk, there's so many people we're talking about that sort of ag space, whatever you want to call it. So many guys and girls sort of showing what's happening. I think it's great. Everyone's doing it for the same reason. No one's better at whatever. Well, everyone's better at something, but you know, from a perspective, we're all here. We find our positives, find our negatives, and work with it. So no, like that a lot. And I love the where do you see yourself in 5 years answer. I love when folks say the same thing. Like it is, you're happy doing what you're doing. That's got to be a win. So no, brilliant. Always good to hear. And yeah, thank you very much for coming on. I appreciate it. I hope you've enjoyed the time yourself.
Yeah, it was great. Thanks a million.
No, not at all. It does sort of fly by. That's been 50 minutes. It sort of disappears.
Yeah, well.
Yeah. 47 minutes, I think, that roughly, something like that at the minute. But yeah, no, thank you very much for coming on, Karen. Appreciate your time. For those of you listening, next episode, number 98, should be NFU Scotland, sort of group there. I haven't got the exact names yet, but some people from policy, some people from marketing, some people from wherever. We'll sort of get a chat there on the group podcast. You've probably noticed a bit of a change regarding the group podcast. The original plan was every Friday was people, every second Monday was groups. That just became really hard. Finding groups was difficult for two reasons. There's not as many groups as there is people. And two, with groups, you need a lot of people, and time and everything together is quite tricky. So it's basically just on a rolling basis now. Fridays and every second Monday will be the podcast, and we'll be releasing, whether that's group or people, whatever that is. As I said, R2Kast 100, which is only 3 away. A bit of an announcement to come. Interesting guest. Well, they're quite interesting, I would say. And as I said, they have been on the R2Kast before. So quite a good one there. Quite looking forward to what I'm announcing there. It's been something I guess I've probably wanted to do since even before the R2Kast was a thing, since before R2K was a thing, since before I started posting online, since all this sort of stuff. Something I've always been quite, I don't know if I'd say passionate about, but I certainly am now, but something I've always wanted to try. So it's quite a big announcement coming, R2Kast 100. For 99, don't know who it is yet, but today was 97 with Karen Moynihan. It's been a great episode, and we shall see you next week for 98. Thank you all very much for listening.
I hope you've enjoyed another excellent episode of the R2Kast. I just want to take this moment to quickly thank our primary sponsors once more, A-Plan Rural. If you follow A-Plan on social media, you'll see the work they're doing to really promote British farming and back our industry. It's been a pleasure working alongside A-Plan Rural so far, and long may it continue. The values of A-Plan Rural runs perfectly in line with the whole mantra of rural to kitchen, and I'm glad to have them on board. Check them out on Instagram at A-Plan Rural and on Facebook at A-Plan Rural Insurance. See you for the next podcast.